Personal Finance class. This is Mrs. Lamphere with Unit 2 of our course. And this unit is called Understanding Credit. You've probably heard that term before, and you probably automatically think credit cards, and that does have a lot to do with a person's credit. But we're going to look a little more into what credit actually means. So when you hear someone has good credit, what does that mean? So that's what we're going to talk about in this unit. Plus, we are going to go into depth on credit cards, interest rates, other types of loans, student loans, mortgages, car loans. Any type of loan has to do with credit. So we're going to be discussing a whole bunch of that stuff today. So let's get started. First of all, what is credit? So the term credit is actually a measure of your financial trustworthiness. So when you hear someone has good credit, that means that they can be financially trusted to pay back any money that was borrowed. So that's what I just said. So having good credit means that people trust you to pay back your loans on time and in full. The better the credit that you have, the more well-known you are for being reliable to pay your money back. That usually qualifies you for lower interest rates on your loans, leading to smaller monthly payments. So the more financially trustworthy you are, the more someone's willing to lower your interest rate and thinking, okay, this person's going to pay me back, so I don't need to charge them too much extra to borrow this money. So essentially, how does credit work? Have you ever heard the term buy now, pay later? That's exactly what it means. So you're borrowing money to buy something now, and then you're going to make payments back to that loaner, either in a lump sum or over a period of time, plus interest. So when I say plus interest, that means that basically you're paying back more money than you borrowed as kind of a payment for borrowing the money. Does that make sense? So say you borrowed $1 from a friend, and that they're going to want back $1.25, just because that's kind of like payment for you borrowing that money would be 25 cents. So it gets a little more complicated than that, but that's kind of like a good idea of what basic credit and loaning and interest looks like. Okay, so first let's talk about what debt is. Debt is money that is owed by one individual. Let's say we have Farmer Joe here and Sally Sue. Okay, Farmer Joe lends Sally Sue $1,000 at 10% interest. Okay, so he's giving her $1,000 for her to spend on whatever it is she wants to spend it on. But when she pays it back, he's expecting that $1,000 plus 10% in order for her to pay him back. Okay, so we have Farmer Joe, who is our creditor. He's our lender in this situation, so he's called the creditor. And we have Sally Sue, who is the debtor or the borrower. Okay, so know those terms. Creditor is the one lending the money. Debtor is the one borrowing the money, because they're the one going into debt, borrowing this money. Okay, so after a year, Sally Sue pays back the money she owed plus the interest, totaling $1,010. So she borrowed $1,000 at 10% interest, so she has to pay back $1,010, because $10 is 10% of 1,000. So she adds that $10 to her principal, which is the amount of money she originally borrowed, so that $1,000, so she has to pay back $1,010. Now that was a really basic example of what kind of loaning with interest looks like. You'll see with credit cards, a lot of times they have anywhere from 18 to 30% interest, depending on how often you're making your payments. So 10%'s actually pretty low when you're borrowing some money. But when you look at actually credit cards, so we'll get more into that here in a minute. Okay, so we said debt is when there is money owed. But did you ever think that there could be good debt or bad debt? Let's take a look. So when we're talking about good debt, this type of debt can actually help you get ahead by earning more money in the long run. So this could be like a college education. Maybe you're going into debt to take out student loans, but in the long run, that's going to get you a better career and you'll be able to pay off those loans. Buying a house or a car, again, this is an example of good debt. It's usually a good debt to have. These are big ticket items that have lasting value. So it's not something that you're going to just consume right away and no longer have. These are items that are going to last you a while, so they're considered good debt. And basically, any type of investment in your future is considered good debt. So again, that would be like student loans, a house, which increases with value as the years go by, hopefully. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But so again, any type of investment in your future is typically a good debt. Okay, let's look at some bad debt. Financing things that you consume, and you're going to hear the term financing a lot. And to finance something means that you're buying it on credit. So if you finance a car, you're buying the car on credit, or you're taking out a loan for that car. So that's what that term financing means. So bad debt is financing things or borrowing money to buy things that you consume. Okay? Because once you've consumed it, it's gone, and you're still having to pay for it. Another form of bad debt is when you don't have the money, or you don't have a plan in place to make the payments in a reasonable amount of time. So in other words, do not borrow money to pay for food, clothes, video games, items that you're going to either consume or will be out of date quickly. Because what happens is if you're borrowing money to buy food, your food runs out. You borrowed $500, you've only paid off $100 by the time your food runs out, and you need to buy more food, so you're borrowing more money to buy more food while you're still paying off the $500 that you borrowed to buy the first chunk of food. So, again, those are examples of bad debt. Okay, when it comes to debt, we need to make some good decisions. Let's look at these examples, and they're kind of obvious, but let's just play along. Okay, paying for a vacation. Bad idea. Go into debt. You're going to be making payments on a credit card, which increases the cost of the vacation. So essentially, to say you're taking a $2,000 all-inclusive vacation, if you put that on credit cards, they're going to charge you interest, and in some cases, a lot of interest. So that $2,000 vacation could easily turn into $2,700 just because you put it on a credit card. So again, you take a week-long vacation, it might take you 5 years to pay off if you put it on a credit card. Better idea is to save for it. Weird concept, saving money to buy something. To save money, maybe you have like a vacation account set up with your bank, and so every month you put $100 into your vacation savings account, and once you have that money saved up, you go on your vacation, and you don't have to go into debt for it because you saved that money up for it. Buying a video game system. Bad idea. Your friends all have it, so you think you need it. That's what gets a lot of people into some debt issues. Keeping up with the Joneses. We mentioned that in the last unit. Peer pressure can end in bad debt. Good idea. Stick to your budget. Save up the video game. If you know that you're going to want to spend money on video games and update your stash once in a while, budget for it in your monthly budget. Make sure you put $20 a month towards a video game fund or something, so that you have money available to go and buy those video games. Okay, wealth and debt. Is there a link between those two words? Well, let's see. Can having debt increase your wealth? Again, we'll look at education. Say you're going to college. You're borrowing money to pay for your college, or you're financing your college education. Technical school or any other type of education is considered an asset. So that's something of value that you will then own. Studies show that people that have a college degree will make over $1 million more than those with just a high school diploma. So, can going into debt eventually increase your wealth? Yes, because of your earning potential once you finish your degree. Okay, so now you have a journal assignment on page 6. And in this journal, it says, in last unit you learned about future earning potential based on those careers that you researched. So you kind of have an idea of how much you'd be making in that career. based on your education, career choice, and experience. Using one of the careers you chose to research, do an internet search to pick a college or trade school for your career. Find out what it's going to cost, so like tuition, board, room, maybe like dormitory costs, and any other necessities you may need to finance your education. So finance, borrow money, put on credit to get an education. Begin with sites such as Sallie Mae and the College Board. Remember, some careers require more than one degree. So some of you that said you maybe wanted to be a doctor or a psychologist, you're going to need more than just a bachelor's degree. So look into that as well. Then what you're going to look at is, will you be able to afford to pay back what you borrowed? That's an interesting concept because so many people go off to college and they major in some really strange majors and they went to a really private, expensive college maybe, and they majored in something that doesn't have a lot of demand as a career field. So then they end up graduating college making $20,000 a year, and they owe $100,000 in college student loans. So that, in that case, that's not a good decision. The more you pay for school, you better make sure that you're in a career that's going to pay you in as much in a salary so that you can get those student loans paid off. So that's something you're going to research based on the career that you chose. Find out how much college is going to cost you. So again, tuition, room and board, a lot of the websites have all that information on there, or some of you might have to make some phone calls, okay? You're doing a little research here, but it's finding out, it's good research, okay? This is information you need to know to make those plans for your next step. Okay, so that's your next assignment, is this journal entry. So make sure you get that done. Okay, let's keep going here. So another way that kind of going into debt can increase your wealth is owning a home. So when you go to buy a home, you take out what's called a mortgage. A mortgage is just a fancy name for a loan to buy a house. Payments towards your mortgage build equity for you. So as you make those payments towards yourself, as you make those payments towards your house, you're owning more and more of that house, increasing your assets or overall wealth because you're owning more and more of that house. So mortgage debt only increases personal wealth if the property holds or increases in value. So some of you might have heard about the big housing crash that took place a few years ago and families that had to file foreclosure, because what happened there is people were owing more on their house than the house was actually worth. So in that situation, owning a home wasn't always the best thing, just because the value of houses was dropping rapidly, and so people were owing more on their house than what their house was actually worth. Okay, but overall, investing in your future always pays off in the end if you make good decisions. So investing in your thinking that buying a video game invests in your future, not exactly how it works. Sorry to break it to you. Okay, so make sure you watch this avatar on page 11, and we'll discuss that in the Class Connect as well. So I'm going to kind of rush through these next two slides to get this done in 15 minutes. So when we're looking at short-term debt versus long-term debt, so debts can be classified depending on the amount of time that you have to pay them back. Short-term debt is usually debt that needs to be paid in full within 1 year. A lot of times this would be like a credit card, where you should be paying off your credit card in full each month. Making minimum payments turns short debt into long-term debt. We'll get more into that when we talk specifically about credit cards. Overdraft protection: if you overdraft or overdraw from your checking account or bounce a check, your bank might cover it but charge you a fee, and you have to pay that back immediately. So then long-term debt are debts that last for longer than a year. A lot of times it's like a mortgage, where it takes 15 to 30 years to pay off. A car payment is usually anywhere from 36 to 72 months. Or student loans typically take longer than a year, usually up to 10 years to pay off. So always, always, always make extra payments on any long-term debt so you can pay it off sooner. That'll save you loads of money in interest. Okay, watch for the next video.